We have an opportunity here today, and I'm really glad that Jason Plummer is able to join us today.
Yeah,
the
thank you.
Republican 12th Congressional District candidate.
Just let me know whenever it's done. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
I'll be right next door.
All right, thank you very much.
We're going to take phone calls in a couple of minutes because Jason has agreed to stay with us in the studio till 9 o'clock today. Our phone number is to call 985-5803. It's 985-5803 or star 1340 if you'd like to talk to the candidate, Republican candidate for the 12th Congressional District seat. But I want to ask you about something I read yesterday. By 2016, the U.S. debt will be $20 trillion. The purse strings for the United States of America reside in the hands of members of the House.
Right.
This is a scary number. We just hit 16 trillion. Just did, or just about to. And 20 trillion is just around the corner.
Right, and it's getting worse. You know, the last 4 budgets in a row we've seen have had deficits of over $1 trillion. And if you look at spending, so the United States of America this year will spend about $3.5 trillion. 2.5 trillion of the 3.5 trillion go to our entitlement programs or interest on the debt. So basically, Social Security, Medicare, interest on the debt, and 3 programs and interest on the debt. That's $2.5 trillion. Then you take everything else the federal government does: military, education, infrastructure spending, FBI, IRS, anything the federal government does.
Space program.
Absolutely.
Department
$1 trillion.
of Agriculture, $1 trillion.
So if we have a deficit larger than $1 trillion, and everything the government does, except for those entitlement programs and interest on the debt, is only $1 trillion, you could, everything the federal government does, except for those 3 things, plus interest on the debt, you could shut down right now, and you'd still run a deficit this year. Which really shows you how frightening things are. And that's what's frustrating. I think the American people across the entire country, especially the ones I run into all the time in Southern Illinois, they understand we're facing some significant problems. They're ready for a very sincere, serious discussion on the problems. And I think our candidates for office need to make sure that they're out there having these tangible, serious discussions, because the problems, as you said, are frightening.
All right, this is part of the problem, is the numbers are so daunting. We've never been in a situation like this before.
No, we never have, and it is, you know, it's really frightening. And when you take the fiscal problem we had in Washington, and then you throw on top of that the economic problems that we're facing all over the country with the unemployment rates being what they are, people are just very frightened and people are very frustrated. And I understand that. Part of solving these deficits and then, of course, the debt in the longer term is turning around the economic environment that we're facing. I mean, I really think I've done town halls and meet and greets in every county. I've been to the county fairs. I go everywhere. I will meet voters and talk to voters anywhere, anytime, any place. And the conversation they want to have this year is unlike the conversations I think they wanted to have in the past. I think the voters get that this is a very serious election, and I think they're very tuned into it, which is, I think, a good thing for our country.
When I made an appearance at the Paul Simon Public Policy Institute Tuesday of this week, speaking with candidates on how to communicate with the media, and your name came up. One of the guys, I think it was the guy from TV3, was talking about your 10-point plan. And I said, yeah, I know he's got a 10-point plan, but I've only heard 4. I'm anxious to hear them all. Because this ties into debt.
Right.
You know, the philosophy from the Republican Party is we'll be able to pay our bills if we get people to work again.
Right.
We haven't seen that happen. The new unemployment, Southern Illinois unemployment numbers, number 1 at 13 something.
Class is number 1.
Is 13. I know even Franklin and all those, Franklin, Union, Johnson, they're all 12.
Yeah, there's numerous Southern Illinois counties that are double digit. You know, if you look, I mean, the nation as a whole ticked up last month. The state of Illinois jumped from 8.7% to 8.9%. My congressional district is about 9.5%, maybe a little bit higher. If you average in, you know, all the counties. But Southern Illinois is really taking some hammer blows, and it's really unfortunate. There's no reason for it. You know, when the numbers came out last month, you know, you get a list of the counties, it's alphabetical, and Alexander County had been number 1. So I looked at Alexander County, and it was still in the top 10, but it wasn't number 1 anymore. And the first thing I said was, hey, look, Alexander County is not number 1 anymore. I was excited. And then I got further down the list to the P's, and there's Pulaski County number 1. And, you know, Southern Illinois just, until we really get this thing turned around, until we kind of change the mindset in Springfield and in Washington on the economy down here, we're not gonna get that change. There's 12 counties in my district. 5 of the 12 are in the bottom 10 of the state in employment. I think there's only one county out of my 12 that's in the top half. That's Monroe County, where I spent some time last night. And all those numbers are scary. What's more frightening is it's getting worse. Last month, every county, all 12 of them in this congressional district, month over month, the unemployment rate got worse.
Worse, increased.
And I'm frightened about what's going to happen this month. The voters are frustrated, and we really have to send people that I think understand these issues to try to address them.
All right. Addressing the problem. You talked about turning this thing around just a couple of moments ago. This is where we come back again to your job plan.
Right.
Let's talk about 1 through 4.
Sure.
Have you gone to 5 yet? Because I know you're releasing these one at a time.
Yeah, we're actually releasing 5 this week, yes.
Okay, good. Well, let's
and there's actually 12 points.
Are there 12?
Yeah, there's 12.
Good.
Yeah, there's 12 points, and we're really proud.
Ballpark, and there's a reason why we only throw one ball at a time.
Right.
Because a lot of people. So let's talk about number 1.
Yeah. No, it will, and I just want to say the way we built this plan and the reason why we're rolling it out, the way we're rolling it out, is some of my personal beliefs went into it. But we took, we got our Ag Coalition, we got our Military Veterans Coalition, we got Energy Coalitions, we got all these groups that are really experts, and we have a very diverse district, we have a very diverse economy down here in Southern Illinois. So we've taken a lot of people who are really sharp in regards to all these things and taken their input. And the town halls, we've done tremendous amounts of town halls. There's things in our jobs plan, which I'm going to talk about one of them in a second, that we have picked up specifically from what people have said at town hall. So we're really proud of it because we think that it's very detailed, more detailed than what you see from, I think most politicians, but it's also specific and very oriented to the economy of the 12th Congressional District. So that's kind of the way we're doing it, the way we are.
Right, because you're in a learning process just like everybody else.
Yeah,
right.
When you take ag and industry and the transportation and SIU Carbondale and Scott Air Force Base and all the things that make up the potentially very vibrant economy of Illinois 12, there's no one person that's an expert in all those things. So you really have to surround yourself with sharp people. So that's how.
You know what's so nice? I'm reading the Talmud now in my spare time, and one of the proverbs from the Talmud is, "Teach your tongue to say, I do not know." Which to me was one of the more enlightened things, because sometimes if you portray yourself as knowing everything and you drop flat on your face, we've seen how that worked on the national level. Being open to learn is a great thing.
Absolutely.
So
the jobs
you get
plan.
experts. Let's talk about jobs plan.
Yeah,
let's
absolutely.
talk about number 1.
So first off, I think that if we're really going to turn around some of the problems we're facing here, we've got to have some regulatory reform. And everybody can talk about, the EPA or the Department of Labor, so on and so forth. But if you look at the industries that are really in the DNA of the economy of Southern Illinois, you can see how they have been overly impacted by, I would say, kind of an out-of-control regulatory environment in Washington. So we had actually Congressman Schock from Central Illinois come down and talk about some of these regulatory issues with us, because he's a co-sponsor of a piece of legislation called the REINS Act. And the REINS Act essentially says if there's any regulatory action that's going to have an economic impact of $100 million or more, as judged by the CBO, Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, then that can't happen through regulatory fiat. That has to happen through legislative action, which makes a tremendous amount of sense to me and a lot of other farmers and businessmen and people out there. So, part of the jobs plan is really rolling back the regulatory environment that I think has really hammered us. We've also rolled out something that I'm really, really excited about, because I think that there's a potential. Every year people talk about tax reform, tax reform, tax reform. I think that if the elections go well in November, I think this will be the first time in a very long time that we could have true tax reform in Washington. And I'm not talking about nibbling on the edges. I'm talking about substantial tax reform that really overhauls both the tax situation for individuals and for businesses, which I think is definitely in dire need.
You supporter of the flat tax?
I like the flat tax. I also, you basically got two competing thoughts from kind of the conservative angle. You got the flat tax folks, and then you kind of have the consumption-oriented tax people,
right.
The fair tax.
Yeah.
And I like both of them. I would take either over what we have right now.
It's interesting. I read Neil Bortz's book,
yes.
And I didn't know a lot about it, and I read it. I'm like, Lord, this makes an incredible amount of sense.
When I was at the Heritage Foundation in 2005, one of my mentors was a guy named Dan Mitchell. He's actually at the Cato Institute now. and he is a passionate fan of the flat tax, and he has some very fascinating information. I think that, when you listen and when you read about the experts that have, crafted the fair tax and some of the more consumption-oriented tax codes too, there's a lot of logic there. I think the key is, we have to be careful in that if you go that direction, you can't have an income tax and this massive sales tax.
Right.
Because
it's a one or the other.
Right. If you give the folks in Washington an opportunity to tax it twice, they'll tax us twice.
Yeah.
So
even though it is anti, not it's against the Constitution, it's double taxation, double indemnity.
Right. And the other problem we have too is a lot of people don't realize that America is this business giant, and I would say the home of capitalism and so on and so forth. But we have the highest corporate tax rates in the world, and that harms our companies. That harms our businesses. And we used to have the second highest corporate tax rate, and then Japan rolled theirs back. So we're at number one again, and so that's something that has to be addressed as well.
Okay, where are we at? Number 2?
What's that?
Number 2 on our list?
Yeah, well, we've got the regulatory reform, we've got taxes, ag issues out there. We need a farm bill. We need a farm bill now. This year is, a very interesting year in regards to the fact that I think some of the issues our farmers are facing are very much being highlighted by this drought that we're facing. And I've met with tremendous amounts of farmers. I've met at numerous farm bureaus at different events. I had a great event up in Perry County where we rolled out part of our ag coalition. Our ag coalition, the ag industry is very diverse. You've got, your corn and soybean guys, you've got your livestock folks, you've got all kinds of people to make up the ag industry of Southern Illinois.
And when it comes to the ag industry, people always seem to get left out.
We first opened about 10 years ago.
We
were small, just a few of us, but it was exciting.
Within the ag industry,
I always dreamt of having my own business.
We have representation.
It was kind of slow at first, but things started picking up. We had big plans, but in our wildest dreams, we never thought we'd have this much money. Yeah, with so many businesses caught off guard by the storm, Reed Waste Management has never been busier.
What will become of your business after a disaster? Nearly 2/3 of businesses aren't prepared for an emergency, and 40% of businesses that experience a disaster never recover. Make an emergency plan now, before it's too late. For a free online tool that helps you develop an emergency plan to keep your business up and running should disaster strike, visit ready.gov/business. Brought to you by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the American Red Cross, and the Ad Council.
And, people say, well, whose fault is it? Look, some of these problems aren't Republican problems or Democrat problems. They're just problems that have to be resolved. And one of my beefs with the Farm Bill is the Farm Bill isn't really a bill about farmers anymore. The Farm Bill now, only about 25% of the funding actually is farmer related. The rest of it goes to food stamps and other programs within the Department of Agriculture.
Numbers came out yesterday on that very subject.
Right.
I mean, and I think a lot of people were surprised and going, wait a second, that's the agriculture department, not the health department? No,
right.
Those food stamps, that's ag.
And so that program really kind of holds the Farm Bill hostage. You may give you a real shocker if people want to be surprised. At the Department of Agriculture, when people say, well, Jason, you always say government's too big or government's grown beyond its original intent, you really believe that. I said, yeah, well, can you give me an example? Well, here's an example. The Department of Agriculture has more workers, more employees than there are farmers in the United States. The Department of Agriculture has more employees than we have farmers. Now, if that's not an amazing statistic, I don't know what is. I mean, we're dealing with right now, and,
It's telling at the very least. I mean, I'd actually seen a similar number on that. People who fill out paperwork for hospitals are more than the number of nurses and doctors in the hospital when it comes to insurance claims. When you realize, is the term top heavy?
Well, very much so. But also, speaking of the healthcare situation, I was with a bunch of docs and nurses in Mount Vernon the other day, and one of maybe if you're in St. Louis or Chicago or Indianapolis at the big hospitals, maybe they have departments that handle the paperwork while the doctors and nurses treat the patients. Well, when you get into more rural areas like we have here, usually it's the docs and the nurses taking care of the patients and doing the paperwork. They don't have the luxury to have these extra bodies there.
Right.
And, I have talked to docs and say, when I got into the system, 80% of my time I was with patients and 20% of my time I was doing back office stuff. Now, 80% of my time I'm doing back office stuff and 20% of the time I'm with patients. And that's the type of stuff that we have to change.
And you know what? I've seen doctors quit and go somewhere else.
Oh,
so they didn't have to do that anymore because I'm not treating patients anymore, but I'm doing a lot of paperwork. And what's interesting, it's almost every doc that I've talked to that's been in a larger university setting or hospital setting. Just can't do the paperwork anymore. It's just nuts.
Right.
I'm glad you brought that up.
No, it's really a tough situation.
Yeah, I tell you what, we're at number 3 now with the Farm Bill, right?
Yeah.
So let's hit number 4 real quick, and then we'll take a small break and start taking phone calls. Okay?
Absolutely. So the red tape problem we have a severe red tape problem in Washington. I would argue we have it in Springfield too, but it's actually prohibiting some of our industries from starting and some of our industries from growing. So I'm a strong supporter of the Red Tape Reduction Act, which essentially streamlines permitting processes and it basically gets the federal government.
Your News Radio WGP First Alert forecast on this Monday, September 10th. Sunny, look for a high 78, clear 52 tonight. Then sunny 85 tomorrow, clear 58 tomorrow night. Wednesday, once again sunny 85, clear and 62 for Wednesday night. Thursday, once again 85, mostly sunny. Thursday night, clear 62. A few more clouds on Friday, partly sunny, 20% chance of showers and thunderstorms, 82. Long range forecast is cloudy, chance of showers on Friday night.
Putting other people out of work. And, we're talking about ag and farmers, perfect example, Department of Labor trying to pass a rule that essentially 14 and 15-year-old kids can't work on the family farm anymore. Well, I would argue to you and to anyone else, this country was built by 14 and 15-year-old kids working on the family farm.
And I was one of them.
And and I have not walked into a room yet. One of my favorite things when I go to different places, especially ag-related places, I say, okay, raise your hand if when you were 14 or 15 years old you worked on the family farm, and every hand in the room goes up every time.
Right.
And the Department of Labor thinks that that's something they don't want to happen anymore. It's the absurdity of just the rules that are getting put in front of our businesses is really frustrating.
I can hear Granddad now. Tomboy, drive the truck. Against the law, Granddad. Tell the police come by and talk to me.
Exactly.
That's exactly what Granddad would say.
Yeah.
If you're out of class, it's time for you to drive the truck.
Yeah, and a lot of these things are Washington, taking a one-size-fits-all solution and throwing it on Southern Illinois. And I'm sick and tired of Washington taking it to Southern Illinois. I want to take Southern Illinois to Washington. That's what this campaign's about. It is common sense, and I think the voters are responding to that.
To me, it's something else. I guess common sense is the only word I'm left with, though. When you think about it, there's a certain, I've been calling it on the air, parade of absurdity that we look at day after day. You want to hear my favorite for the week?
Absolutely.
California, new piece of legislation. They want to pay to have the tattoos removed from prostitutes with state funds.
Really? I was not aware of that one. Well, don't tell anybody in Springfield about that one, or we'll know what the next thing they'll be doing is.
Then it'll be who gets the tattoo removal franchise, and it'll be somebody who knows somebody else.
Yeah, it'll be like Mike Madigan's cousin or something,
Yeah, we've already seen that with the former governor and the the ankle bracelet monitors a couple of years back. You'll remember that story.
Yes.
Bought it, got the franchise, and then sold it for $20 million, made $18 million by buying some old, outdated equipment from another state that didn't work, and then selling it off.
Foisting it on the taxpayers.
Incredible. It's now 8:42. We're going to take a sports break, a news break, and then we're going to take your phone calls. If you want to call in now's the time, and be prepared to take your phone call. Jason Plummer is the Republican 12th District candidate. He's here in the studios now, 985-5803 or star 1340. And sunny tomorrow, 95. We're going to go to sports so that we can finish out the last segment in toto with phone calls. If you'd like to call us now, speak with a Republican candidate for the 12th congressional seat. This is a seat currently held by Jerry Costello, 985-5803 or star 1340. You want to call now and get in line if you want to be able to speak with a candidate. Before we move to sports quickly, I want to ask you about something else. I saw two press releases said we won the debate.
Right.
In Bradshaw, everybody claimed victory in the debate last week.
Well, I'm sure every I think that's part of politics is everyone's always claiming victory, but I feel pretty comfortable that if anybody watched the debate, there was definitely a difference between the candidates, and we're proud of our performance, and we look forward to an opportunity to have more debates, and I would even like to see an opportunity where there's more give and take and a little more substantial back and forth in the debates, because I think that's where we can really define ourselves as the campaign that's about Southern Illinois.
Are you a millionaire who inherited his money?
No.
I got a press release that said you inherited, you are a recipient of millions of dollars that you inherited.
Right, and I got really nervous when I saw that press release because I had talked to my parents earlier that morning on the phone, and so when I saw the press release, I heard him call my parents to make sure they're still okay. They're okay, so yes, I haven't inherited anything. You know, it's funny. Politics is unfortunate. We were, at the beginning of the show, we were talking about these are substantial problems we're facing. We need some serious people and some serious solutions. You know, my family's been pretty successful as of recent. That being said, you know, I'm a generation removed from poverty. You know, I understand firsthand the struggles that folks have. You know, my father, he's one of those guys in the late 60s, grew up, you know, with an outhouse. No running water, no electricity. You know, when I say poverty, I mean poverty. And through hard work and, you know, the American system and a little bit of luck and some great employees, we've been pretty successful.
And I have a sense of feeling that when you have a father who has gone through that type of thing, that he, as a very high priority in his life, was to implant his codes into you.
Oh, absolutely. You know, it was kind of always a joke growing up. I mean, I played Little League Baseball and did all that kind of stuff. But outside of sports, you know, I never really had a summer vacation or, you know, a spring break or Christmas break because when I was in elementary school, man, we have RP Lumber Company, you know, and I was at RP Lumber working. You know, I've done everything there's to do, and my father, I think, and my sisters too. I've got two older sisters. They're both great. They got families now, but we were instilled with a certain work ethic, and I think that you know, comes directly from his experiences growing up.
Okay, our last segment coming up in your phone calls, 985-5803 or star 1340. Mike Murphy's got a look at sports. A household name in Southern Illinois,
sure.
An incumbent leaving the office. You have the confusion that came out of the Democratic Party with Tom Herron, but nevertheless, this is one of the most important races in the country, and it's going on right now. You are starting to feel that importance because of the interest that's been focused at you?
Absolutely. It's a very important race in a very important election year. You know, I think that we have an opportunity this November to make some very serious decisions. And I think depending on how those decisions go, it could greatly alter, you know, the culture of our nation. It could greatly alter the direction that we're moving. So I realize this race is very important. Nancy Pelosi was former Speaker of the House. She thinks she's going to become Speaker of the House again, and she thinks she's going to use the state of Illinois as the foundation of her new majority, the way that they gerrymandered all of the districts. And if we win this race, which I think we're going to do, but we've got to work hard to do it, if we win this race, that makes it extraordinarily difficult for Nancy Pelosi to become Speaker of the House, because this was a race that she was counting on having, and a seat she was not counting on having to fight to win. So this is a great opportunity for the Republican Party, and the voters all the time, you know, I tell people, look, you know, I'm a pro-life guy, I'm a pro-gun guy, I'm for low taxes, I want to get government off your backs, and the choice is pretty simple. Do you want Nancy Pelosi to be Speaker of the House or a conservative to be Speaker of the House? And, you know, if you're for me, you're for a conservative. It's pretty simple.
Okay, we got a call here. Looks like, I'm thinking, Norm, is that you, buddy?
That's me, Tom. I listen every single day.
I know you do, Norm, and I trust that you're there. Norm, my good buddy here. Hey, Norm, how are you, first? And two, what's your question for Jason today? Because we're running out of time quick.
Well, it's more of a comment, and because he's covering a lot of things. And I will tell you straight up. Well, first of all, Tom, thank you for having Jason on. And I was doing some business right at the beginning of the conversation, so I didn't even know who we were talking to, and I'm thinking, boy, this is really good.
Great.
And I had just forgot. Well, in any event, you're doing a great job, and I wasn't even for Mr. Plummer. You know, originally I voted for somebody else in the primaries, and I will tell you, I made a mistake because I watched those debates twice, and they were just fantastic. If you could do more of this, and I'd sure like to get Mr. Inyard on to...
Mr. Inyard agreed on Wednesday of this week, I believe it was. No, on Tuesday of this week at 7:30, he agreed to come on as soon as he could fit in his schedule to be in the studio.
Okay. And I have one comment about the general election that's going on, and the way that anybody... Now, I don't have a lot of money. I've got a lot of assets, okay? I've been working 50 years to get where I'm at today. But it offends me when I see our president, attacking anybody that's built something up as it's like, oh, well, they've got a nice house, it's okay to go steal from them.
Well, I think the impression, I'd like to hear more on Jason's thought of this, that you only achieve things at the suffering or discontent or by taking away from other people. That's the subtext that I read in that.
And that's so wrong, and I'll let you guys say it, get into it, because it's the only way that anybody makes anything is by putting out an asset or a service that somebody needs. If somebody needs strawberries, you raise strawberries, well, then you've got a going opportunity there.
Right. Hey, thanks, Norm. And this is one of the debates that's going on nationwide, and quite frankly, I don't think people were prepared for it or how to handle it exactly. I think they almost were shocked by some of the comments.
No, absolutely, and I think it's just two completely different philosophical beliefs. I would argue that the president and his allies, they almost look at the economy and our society as one pie, and you can only split the pie so many ways, and they want to kind of give everybody the same piece of pie. The economy is not one piece of pie. It's not static. It's fluid, and the economy grows. And if we have policies in place that grow the economy, everybody can improve their situation in life.
I want to ask you about something else there,
Sure.
Because we've only got 3.5 minutes left.
Sure.
I talked with Bill Inyard this week, and we talked about Mount Vernon. We talked about Continental Tire. He says, look at what's going on in Illinois. Let's focus on the positive. And I think you and I both agree on that particular aspect.
Right.
But it was interesting because I said to him first, well, Continental Tire, the reason they're progressing so much so quickly is because government has helped them. And when I mean help, they've gotten out of the way. They've asked for less. They've given incentives. And see what happens to business. It blossoms. Well, he didn't take that. He said, no, I think because Continental Tire, it's because of infrastructure. Because Jerry Costello, I'm paraphrasing here, put the highways and the roads and ensured they had transportation funding that allowed these businesses to grow and transport their goods.
Yeah, and I heard that. First off, Mount Vernon, Jefferson County, the unemployment rate's pretty high there, but they are trending in the right direction. Good things are happening there, and I know that my opponent said that Jefferson County was doing well because of what Jerry Costello did. But I think that shows you how little my opponent knows about Southern Illinois, because Jefferson County has been represented by John Shimkus for the last many years. Jefferson County was just drawn into this district. But getting to he needs to understand his district if he's going to represent his district. But that being said, I think there's people that think government is the creator of all situations, and some people just got lucky, and that's not how it works. The people that pay for those roads, the people that pay for that infrastructure, are the people that are growing this economy, are the people that are working. And if we expand our economic base, if we allow companies like Continental Tire or anyone else to grow and employ more people, that's going to be more tax revenue. That's going to be better roads, better bridges, better rivers. No, you're exactly right. Government is the beneficiary of a vibrant economy, and that's what our people need to understand, is that this is not government giving back. Any dollar spent by government is our dollar. It comes out of our pocket.
Yeah, government's money. I know. I hear that phrase. I twitch every time I hear government
absolutely.
money. Not government's money. They just printed it. Hey, Glenn, how are you this morning? You still with us, Glenn? I think we lost Glenn. Sorry, Glenn. Let's see one more time. Are you there? Did I lock you out? Nope. All right. Sorry, we lost a caller. I'll tell you what we'll do here. Can you stay a little while longer?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because I don't want to. Because I know you got an exceedingly busy day.
We do, but no.
Let's steal just a bit more time, because what we're talking about here. I had a friend of mine says he was in my office this week. He says we can't legislate morality. I think you actually can to a certain extent. Murder is morality, and we do legislate. But the philosophy, the foundation of this, what we've seen in the way the Tea Party has gone about, of returning to our base principles, of remembering who we are as a country, remembering what freedom is about, has been a subtext of the last two elections, hasn't it?
Absolutely, it absolutely is. I mean, I think these elections are decisions about what direction our culture is going in. Absolutely,
and you use culture, and I think that's interesting. A culture where you expect the government to come and save you and to be the cornucopia from which all things come.
Well, I think, some folks, yes. Other folks, I just saw a very interesting poll that came out a couple days ago that said that, it was the high 50s, 58, 59, something like that, percent of the voters want less government, want government to be less involved in their daily lives. And it was the low 30s, it was like 31% said they wanted government to be more involved in their daily lives. And I definitely stand with the 58 or 59%. I think that we have a federal government and a state government for that matter, but a federal government that has grown beyond the original intents and purposes of our founding fathers. And what really frightens me about the president and some of his allies in the House and the Senate are they definitely have a mindset, and they want that mindset, they want their beliefs implemented. And if they can't get it done legislatively, they'll figure out another way to do it. And there's basically two things. If you take social issues, what they can't get done legislatively because the majority of the population are against it, on social issues, they try to get it done through the court system. And what they can, then when you go to fiscal issues, what they can't get done legislatively on fiscal issues, like cap and trade, for example, they try to
an executive
yeah, they try to do it through regulatory fiat, exactly. And that's what really frightens me is that when the legislative body says no, when the voice of the people says no, these people say, well, we're a little bit smarter than you, and we know a little bit better about what's right for you, so we're going to try to do it another way.
So is it about what they believe, or is it about their sense of power? I talked with Mike Lawrence, Mike?
Yes.
And I said, Mike, why do politicians do things like this? And he said, because they can.
Well,
it's a very zen attitude, granted, towards it, but you know what? Whenever you hear the truth, you have a tendency to recognize it very quickly.
Yes. We'll find out on November 6th if they can. They
have so far.
They have so far, but if we throw them out, I think the voters' voices will have been heard. But no, I mean, you see an administration right now that when they're told no through the proper channels, they try to create new channels, and that's you just haven't seen that type of stuff happen in the past, and that's very frightening to I think most of the people out there. And what really frustrates the average voter, like I said, I do town halls and meet and greets, and I get in front of as many people as I possibly can all the time. And what frustrates people the most is that the problems that they're facing, which are severe problems, huge unemployment, so on and so forth, the problems that they're facing are completely getting ignored and neglected.
Arizona and immigration.
Right. They're sitting here right now going, if unemployment was at 4.5% and things were going pretty good, we didn't have the massive deficits, maybe some of the silly stuff would be, just a blind eye would be torn, given towards it. But right now, unemployment rate is going through the roof. You have the immigration problems. You've got a lot of frustration. You see the debt. You see the deficits. You see laws being implemented through regulatory fiat that the voters don't agree with. And they're sitting here going, look, I can't get a paycheck. I can't put a coat on my child's back. I can't send my kid to school. I can't take care of the things that I want to take care of. And Washington's doing nothing to help me. And Washington's doing nothing to focus on the problems that are negatively impacting our lives. That's where the frustration is right now.
Okay. Hey, we're going to go to a caller. I'm sorry I don't have your name, but what's your first name?
Dwayne.
Hey, Dwayne.
Very quickly for the candidate. He did state that he was pro-gun.
Yes.
But I'd like his position on any type of infringement upon Second Amendment rights, specifically an assault weapons ban.
Dwayne, I'm really glad you called. Dwayne, thanks a ton, man. All right, let's talk about it. Second Amendment, assault weapons ban.
Well, I disagree with the premise of the question. I think they call them assault weapons to try to frighten people that aren't familiar with firearms. The fact of the matter is I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I own semi-automatic weapons. Life member of the NRA, ISRA, was just endorsed last week by Gun Owners of America, which is the second largest gun owners group in the United States. It was that endorsement meant a tremendous amount to me because a passionate supporter of the Second Amendment. I think it's ridiculous.
Well, let's talk about the assault gun thing here. You got the endorsement because we're running out of time.
Yeah,
we got like 52 seconds. Mm-hmm. I talked with Richard Pearson, the Illinois director of the National Rifle Association, 2 weeks ago. He says the problem with assault bans is people in Springfield don't know anything about guns.
Exactly.
They will take an assault weapon, ban that, judge it by its gauge, implement that on top of a shotgun, which is, by bore and gauge and caliber. Caliber right and bore, and suddenly you've said, well, that caliber weapon is outlawed anymore, and when you take a look at it as gauge for a shotgun, you've now outlawed automatic shotguns that are used for goose hunting in southern Illinois.
Absolutely, and that's what I meant. They don't understand firearms. You've got these people creating rules that don't understand it, So, even if someone didn't like guns, the fact of the matter is, it's a constitutional right. And you can't violate the Constitution because you do or you don't like something. So a strong supporter, I want to see concealed carry in Illinois. I do whatever I can at the federal level to enact that. But no, you will not find a friendlier person in terms of the Second Amendment than me in Washington, D.C. I think it's the fabric of our nation.
2 ensures 1.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
I mean, the Founding Fathers knew the day that's on our doorstep would come. It's here. And we're talking federal judges who've said as much, literally, in the last 48 hours, prepare for civil war. You've got a congressman who is a survivalist, says, the time draweth nigh. I mean, there are a lot of people out there concerned about government overreach, and the Founding Fathers were too, and that's why it was number 2 and not number 12 or number 8 or something else. I mean, we've really got to the point where that conversation is once again relevant, haven't we?
Our Founding Fathers were very sharp guys. I tell people all the time, if we just go back to the basics, good things will happen. If we let the American people do what they do best, good things will happen. The Second Amendment is, like I said, it's part of the fabric of our nation, but it's there for a reason. It's there to definitely keep government in check. People have to realize the time and the era when those documents were drawn, what those people had experienced in life. They wanted to make sure none of us experienced it.
Tyranny.
Yes, and they wanted to make sure none of us experienced it, and that's why it's in there.
Congressman, a congressional district candidate from the Republican Party, Jason Plummer, thanks for giving me the extra time today, man. Really glad that Dwayne was able to call.
Yeah, it's always great to be on your show. Thanks, and appreciate everybody. Hope to see them there tonight in DuPont at the parade.
Cotton candy for everybody.